I was having you, but Rico from Street Scores, and man, simply put, we just suck. That's it. That's literally the only way to really describe it. We literally just not good. It's that simple. But y'all know how these videos go. Rico at Street Scores. When I do a game review, we're gonna go position group by position group, starting with the quarterback all the way down to the offensive line, starting with the defensive line on the defense, going all the way through the safeties. We're gonna go position group by position group and break down what went well and what went terribly wrong, because it was a lot more wrong than good. Of course, the refs, I'm just gonna go ahead and address it now. I mean, clearly one-sided officiating, but it is what it is. We didn't play well enough to win that game, even if the refs weren't doing what they were doing. So we're going to go ahead and get that out the way now. And again, we're going to be completely objective. We're going to go all the way down from the quarterbacks and talk about how Trai Turner got benched. We're going to talk about some random advanced statistics that don't look too good, especially for Ron Rivera's case. Is it time to move on from everybody? Ron Rivera, Scott Turner, Jack Del Rio, the whole organization, Martin Mayhew. Is it time to move on for a younger guy? Is it time to move on at quarterback? Is it time to just go ahead and bench Carson Wentz? Go ahead and let Taylor Heineke go while you're getting Sam Howell ready to start for the rest of the year? Because, I mean, there is a point to this. Looks like it could end up being a good quarterback class. What if you skip on this quarterback class because you don't know what Sam Howell could have done when you could have already have played them this season to get a better idea? And then maybe you just have Sam Howell as a backup. You got him in the 5th round and you go get your top quarterback in this draft. Who knows? There's a lot of scenarios out there. I don't want to talk about draft too much, even though I love the draft. Y'all know I'm a big college football person and everything, so I'm already aware. I'm already having my ideas, but I haven't started talking about it on this channel and making videos because I know a lot of people, you know, feel like when you start talking draft, you gave up on the season. I haven't given up on the season, but I just love my draft stuff, especially watching my Georgia Bulldogs, watching the SEC and a lot of the top players. Even though Will Anderson plays for Alabama, love watching every snap he's on the field. And I'm going on a tangent, but basically I am keeping track of what our weaknesses and strengths are right now, and what are some of our strategies that we may need to deploy when it comes to the draft process, and what we need to do in free agency. I mean, with as bad as his offensive line is, Trai Turner getting benched, is it time to bring in Ereck Flowers? With how much guys are getting beat underneath, is it time to bring back Landon Collins? But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure y'all pull up for the post-game live stream. We already had like a shorter version of the post-game live stream immediately after the during the game live stream that I just did today throughout the whole Cowboys game, calling all of the plays, analyzing everything live. But I'm more than likely also gonna have a post-game live stream tomorrow, as in Monday evening as well, for more people to call in to voice their frustrations and all of that. But without further ado, let's get it. All right, so before we dive into each individual position group, and just to call out Ron Rivera, since Ron Rivera has been the head coach for the Washington Commanders, Washington football team, whoever, 2020, we started 2-5 through the first 7 weeks with 4 double-digit losses. In 2021, last year, started off 2-5 through the first 7 weeks with 4 double-digit losses once again. And then this season, 1-3 with 3 double-digit losses through just 4 weeks. And remember, we scored a garbage time touchdown versus Detroit in week 2. These terrible starts are not it. Granted, it just always seems like Ron Rivera teams find a way to rally towards the middle or the end of the season to be respectable. It's like we're not good enough to do anything important, but then we win enough games towards the end of the season just to ruin our draft positioning. It just seems like that's the Ron Rivera way right now. So it does beg the question, is it time to move on? Now, one big negative to moving on is, first of all, starting over always just sets your team back probably like a year or 2 or things like that. And then, you know, a new regime wants new players. So a lot of the players that we even consider good and we like, maybe they just don't like a Derek Forrest. Maybe they don't like a Curtis Samuel. Maybe that's just not how they want to run the offense. Maybe they don't like an Antonio Gibson. So guys even that we like, maybe a new regime is like, nah, this is not the way we want to go with those guys. So now there's this roster turnover where we're letting go guys that us as fans actually like, and they're trying to bring in new guys that fit more of their scheme and culture that they're trying to build, or whatever, their winning style, whoever, offense, defense, special teams. And then also, after you fire Ron Rivera, who wants to coach this team? I mean, your best bet is possibly getting a really good college coach, an offensive-minded young guy that's like super innovative, but he would have to be coming from college because nobody with any good name, any proven name, wants to step into this situation. As of right now, our best selling point is paying a coach a lot of money. We have some first round picks throughout the roster, and DC's a nice place to live. But outside of that, like, we really don't have much going for us. So after you fire Ron Rivera, then what? So it's just a really ugly situation we're in right now for sure. Now let's go ahead and get to the players, starting with the quarterback. Carson Wentz simply was just really bad today. Now we're going to get to this, but in order of blame that this game goes to, offensive line number 1 easily. I would say Carson Wentz is probably 2, Scott Turner is probably 3, William Jackson somewhere in the top 5, top 7 easily. I mean, there's blame to go around everywhere. And then, like I said, the refs were definitely one-sided. I mean, literally that one play where Terry Mclaurin was in the back of the end zone, Trevon Diggs held him, literally made him change directions going for the fade route from Carson Wentz. Now, granted, Carson Wentz didn't throw a good enough ball for Terry Mclaurin to catch it anyway, but that was still a flag. It should have been thrown. Literally the next play, because that was a 4th down attempt. So the very next play, Cowboys are on offense. William Jackson holds the receiver by the shoulder, pretty much the same way Trevon Diggs held Terry Mclaurin, and then there's a call. So it's just like that was happening all throughout the game, and we're going to talk about the defensive line later, but they were getting held left and right, including Montez Sweat that was literally getting held by the helmet, and they didn't call it, but it is what it is. Again, not going to blame the refs because we didn't play well enough, even if the refs weren't one-sided, but they were definitely one-sided. You were not looking at the football game for real if you truly felt the refs were fair this game. So it is what it is, though. So back to the quarterback and the long list of reasons why we lost this game. Like I said, I think Carson Wentz is probably the second biggest blame for this, because granted, the offensive line has been terrible, and again, offensive line is the number 1 reason why we lost this game, but he's also just not good, period, right now, and he's just not the quarterback for a bad O-line. There's quarterbacks out there that have a skill set that can make a bad O-line look good. He's not it. He's not as athletic as he used to be, as fast as he used to be. He's not a running threat, and that's one thing that, even though I'm not a big fan of Taylor Heinicke, even though I do appreciate him beating the Falcons, and he is from Gwinnett, he's from the state of Georgia, so I root for him, and I want him to be great, but it's just like, I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. He has a limited ceiling. I prefer to draft the guy, but at least he provides a running threat, which would probably make defenses hesitate a little bit more, maybe run a little bit more zone, and then maybe that opens things up for our offense overall. But right now, Carson Wentz is pretty much a statue, which, you know, at his best, he could run, but he's just not the same guy. He's scared in the pocket. Again, the offensive line has been terrible, but usually quarterbacks, when they know their offensive line is terrible, they're able to diagnose plays quicker. They're able to maneuver in the pocket while things are collapsing around them and make a play. I mean, I feel like, first of all, outside of even just the inaccuracies from today, overthrowing open receivers constantly, that play where he escaped out of the pocket, had plenty of time to just throw it out of bounds. Then he tried to throw it out of bounds at the very last second as he's getting sacked, and then that was an intentional grounding. That was terrible. Again, another play where the offensive line blocking was terrible. Of course, offensive line was the biggest reason why we lost this game, but Carson Wentz had plenty of time to just get that ball out of bounds. We were supposed to score a touchdown that drive, but he ruined it with that intentional grounding right there, and there you go. So he was just bad straight up and down all game. I mean, he had some moments, maybe like a handful of plays that he actually made some good throws. That Jahan Dotson throw was perfect. Couldn't have thrown that any better. But other plays, he was overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys, even some catches that he made, even some receptions that he had, he was underthrowing guys, and they would just have to make crazy catches to get it. And I just hate this narrative that Trevon Diggs is locking up Terry, because Terry has been open so much. Carson Wentz just doesn't get it to him, or the offensive line doesn't give Carson Wentz enough time to get it to him. Carson Wentz is underthrowing Terry, all kinds of stuff. It was just a really bad game from him. We could talk about Carson Wentz for an hour long alone, but that's pretty much the synopsis of it. Moving on to the running backs, I feel like Antonio Gibson was pretty good today. J.D. McKissic was good when he wasn't running the ball. Like, for the most part, when he got the ball out in somewhat type of space, like a screen or something, he was great. But Antonio Gibson was one of our better running backs. Jonathan Williams even ran the ball pretty well today out of the backfield in between the tackles. It looked like we were able to beat the Cowboys when we ran outside of the tackles more than we could inside. But we still had some pretty good runs in the tackle, even though I can't wait to have Brian Robinson back. And hopefully, since he's going to be eligible to play next week along with Chase Young and Tyler Larson, hopefully he is ready to play, because we do miss a Brian Robinson. But I do feel like Antonio Gibson has been running well, and most importantly, he's been protecting the ball. Now, the tight ends, I don't know what happens today, why we just refused to target them for the majority of the game. I think at the halftime, we only had 2 targets to our tight ends. Armani Rogers, I don't believe, had any targets. And then only one of those 2 targets in the first half was that short throw to Logan Thomas. First, oh yeah, let's go back to that. That time management was terrible. Why were we calling timeouts on defense? We got the ball with 1 minute and 4 seconds left after the Cowboys kicked their field goal. Why do we run the ball like 3 times and then have a short throw nowhere near the out of bounds? And then with 22 seconds left, we're trying to throw a deep bomb. What was that clock management? What was the message we were trying to send? What was the goal? Were we trying to run out the clock and get the halftime with the score currently where it was? Or were we actually trying to go down the field and get anything done? I'm going to blame Ron Rivera for that. I feel like Scott Turner calls the plays, but Ron Rivera tells him what type of plays he wants. Ron Rivera tells Scott Turner, okay, we just want to waste the clock, see what we can get out of it. If something happens, but we're not going to force it. And then from there, Scott Turner calls the plays that he did. And I'm pretty sure Ron Rivera told him he wanted to run the ball, I guess, for some weird reason. And that goes back to this whole Ron Rivera thing. Are we ready to move on from him? Because he is somewhat of a dinosaur. He's one of those stuck in his ways type of old guys that's just not going to work in the NFL right now. You got to be innovative. I love Ron Rivera as a culture changer and a culture builder, but we need some innovative guy that has control of the offense, complete control, because Scott Turner doesn't seem to have complete control of the offense. But at the same time, he's one of those innovative guys that gets too cute a lot of the time and doesn't do the simple things right. So we're just all the way messed up. But either way, yeah, that clock management on that drive was absolutely terrible. Like, what were we trying to do? Were we trying to run the clock out, or were we actually trying to put up some points before the end of the drive, before the end of the half? But going back to the tight ends, I don't know why we barely targeted them. I mean, they started to get the ball more in garbage time after the game was already out of reach, but that was just overall bad. And John Bates even had a fumble one time that we did recover, but it just wasn't a great game from either of the guys from what I remember anyway. And then even when a tight end may have been open, Carson Wentz was overthrowing them anyway. And then the receivers, it's just no way between Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, not at least 1 or 2 of those guys are open every play. If Trevon Diggs is barely covering Terry McLaurin, because again, he's not locking Terry McLaurin up. It's more so just bad throws from the quarterback, Scott Turner not calling up the right plays. Either way, whatever. Even if you want to say Trevon Diggs is locking up Terry McLaurin, which he wasn't, Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel should be open every play outside of that. I mean, Jahan Dotson, I saw him get open a few times and not get the ball. Terry McLaurin, I remember, had one play where he was just completely open, but Carson Wentz was under duress and wasn't able to get Terry McLaurin the ball that play either. Curtis Samuel made some great catches, even if they didn't count weren't in bounds today. But that receiving group, again, even national analysts that think our offensive line is terrible, think Carson Wentz is terrible, think we're probably only going to win 5 games this season bad. Even those analysts admit that we have a potentially elite wide receiver core. So there's no reason that these guys are not open every play. And if they are, why are we not getting them the ball? I feel sorry for him, man. Jahan Dotson's out there doing everything he can. Poor Terry McLaurin, poor Curtis Samuel. And it was crazy too, because Carson Wentz had like 50 something yards right before the final drive going into halftime, and pretty much almost all of it was screens. Any throw that was forward, had any forward progress, was incomplete. Any throw that was a screen, that was where all of his yards were coming from, until we got to the second half for the most part, pretty much. It was just really ugly, man. Poor receivers. Y'all deserve better than this. Then moving on to the offensive line before we move on to the defense. And again, it's y'all fault more than anything else. Starting from the right side, Samuel Cosmi, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why we've regressed so much, but Samuel Cosmi just straight up isn't good. And I've been saying this all week leading up to this game. I even said it in one of my videos. Ideally, moving Samuel Cosmi in the right guard gives us our best chance of having a good offensive line. He's just not the greatest build for a tackle. He's very athletic, he's very strong, very quick and all of that. But like my boy Ivory said, he just doesn't have the arm length. He's built like a guard. So why not put him at guard where he could end up being a really good Pro Bowl level guard? I always even thought coming out of the draft that he would be a better guard than tackle. But my logic was, if he can be really good at tackle, put him out there, because that's a more necessary, a more vital position. So like if he can be great at both, you put him at tackle. But right now it looks like he's not great at tackle. Move him to guard because Trai Turner got benched. for a reason. He was terrible. Saahdiq Charles went out there, didn't do much better, even though he wasn't as bad as Trai Turner, but he also wasn't good. Put Samuel Cosmi at guard, let Cornelius Lucas start at right tackle. And now, granted, if there's an injury to either of the tackles, Charles Leno or Cornelius Lucas at that point, then we just have no tackles left. We're gonna have to find one in free agency, and it would get really ugly. So maybe that's why they're not doing that. But if you ask me right now, especially with Wes Schweitzer and Chase Roulier hurt, the best offensive line we can put out there on paper right now is Samuel Cosmi at right guard, Cornelius Lucas at right tackle. I say we at least try it. Now, back to my point that I mentioned earlier, why is Ereck Flowers not on this team? We thought letting Ereck Flowers go to free agency, Brandon Sheriff go to Jaguars, and replacing them with Andrew Norwell and Trai Turner for way less money would be the answer. And it sounded good in theory, but it's obviously not working out. Why not bring back Ereck Flowers? He's out there chilling. Now, granted, if I'm Ereck Flowers, I'm like, unless y'all pay me crazy money for disrespecting me, first of all, for thinking you can replace me with that you got out there playing for y'all, out there getting beat bad every play. The fact, just the disrespect from that alone. And then second, like, you want me to come back and try to save this team from the dysfunction y'all are already in, where I'm putting my life on the line and practicing extra hard and playing extra hard just for us to lose games anyway? Y'all gonna have to pay me the bag. So if I'm Ereck Flowers, I'm like, nah, the price done gone up. Yesterday's price is not today's price. But still, y'all need to go out there and get that man. Because at the very least to replace Trai Turner. And then maybe you move Andrew Norwell to right guard and put Ereck Flowers where he was best at left guard. Either way, bring Ereck Flowers in and get this offensive line going. And again, this offensive line has been terrible. I mean, even one of those plays where Carson Wentz got sacked when we were like on their side of the field and it looked like we were trying to put up points, it may have been the intentional grounding play. I can't remember exactly, but they rushed 4 versus our 5, and 3 guys were there tackling Carson Wentz. Actually, that was another play. That was not the intentional grounding play because they sacked him. I remember that. He tried to maneuver around and try to maybe run for a couple of yards, so it's not a negative play, but they got to him. They rushed 4 versus our 5, and somehow 3 ended up sacking Carson Wentz. That's inexcusable. That just allows them to have 7 in coverage, and who's going to be open with 7 players in coverage, especially in the red zone where there's not much field to work with anyway. So the offensive line, this is just atrocious. Y'all are literally selling right now. Again, it's a lot of people to blame. Scott Turner, Carson Wentz, a lot of the players on the defense being inconsistent. They'll be good one game and terrible the next. But at the end of the day, the offensive line is the main reason we're 1-3. And what's really interesting, I talked about this on the live stream just a couple of hours ago. The NFC East is the winningest division in football right now, but we're 1-3, so we're not helping at all. Technically, you can say we're helping because we gave the Eagles and the Cowboys a win, so technically we are helping. But if you're looking at the win percentage right now, we're not helping at all, and the NFC East is still number 1. The Giants are 3-1, Cowboys 3-1, Eagles 4-0. We're sitting there 1-3 at the bottom of the division by far. It's not even close. It's really ugly, and there's just not much hope even going forward because the Titans are a good team. The Titans are a really good team. The Bears are surprising. Hopefully by then, you know, Chase Young, Tyler Larson, Brian Robinson are back, and we're a more fully loaded team. Maybe Chase Roulier comes back soon afterwards if he's only on temporary IR rather than out the entire season. We'll see, but it's just ugly right now, man. We look like we're destined for a top 10, top 5 pick as of right now if we don't change things. I'm not saying we're going to end up with a pick that high because, again, Ron Rivera teams usually rally at the end of the year. Like I said, kind of feels pointless to a degree because we're terrible and we're not good enough to do anything important to go to the playoffs, or even if we make it to even win a playoff game, and then we're just winning games towards the end of the season / the middle of the season just to basically ruin our draft positioning. But we'll see. Hopefully we can turn it around soon enough to where the draft is inconsequential. We're not even thinking about it. We're like playoff bound, but we'll see. As of right now, the way we're playing, that's definitely not the case. Then going to the defensive line, overall, y'all got to be better. Now, granted, y'all all getting hold a lot. Y'all are getting held a lot. I saw Montez Sweat getting held often, but even the plays you're not getting held, you're not there. But I mean, remember, even though it's technically a play where it was incomplete, they ended up punting the ball anyway, and we probably would have declined the penalty anyway, but it was a great example of how the refs were just blind to what the Cowboys were doing. Montez Sweat is literally right in front of the quarterback, the only player currently holding the ball out of the entire field, right on him, like literally like this close from grabbing him with a offensive lineman's hand and his face mask turning him. And it's just like, we don't see that, refs. Again, we would have declined the penalty anyway, but it's just like he was getting held in situations like that all game, and they would call holds on us, but not them. So the defensive line, like, y'all still got to be better. There's no excuses. Even without the holds, y'all weren't as good as y'all should have been, but the holds that were not being called, man, that just wasn't fair. Then linebacker-wise, Cole Holcomb wasn't good or really bad. He was just out there. I mean, I don't know how we expected him to cover Michael Gallup for more than 5 seconds. That was a recipe for disaster anyway. Same thing with Jamin Davis. He had a great game against the run today, and I feel like he was even pretty good in coverage at times, because I think it was Tony Pollard. He was following step for step one play up the field towards the sideline, towards like the end zone or something. I think it was Tony Pollard. It was somebody, Michael Gallup. Either way, it was really good coverage that play. But of course, he got beat on back-to-back plays by CeeDee Lamb. But it's just like, why Jack Del Rio is Jamin Davis covering CeeDee Lamb anyway? Now, that's a good job by Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, to match and put CeeDee Lamb in a situation to where he would go across Jamin Davis, and he would technically be Jamin Davis's responsibility, which is an easy mismatch, obviously. But still, like Jack Del Rio, we got to do better than that. Like I said throughout the live stream, we just need to have Benjamin St-Juste man cover CeeDee Lamb, because he's not a great separator anyway. And then you can have everybody else in zone who you want to. You can have guys in man zone, whatever. But every play that CeeDee Lamb is running a route, Benjamin St-Juste needs to be man covering him, period, because every time he was on them, he locked them up for the most part. And so, but back to Jamin Davis, my point is, Jamin Davis was really good today, outside of the fact that he was tasked with covering CeeDee Lamb back-to-back plays, and of course those passes were completed for good gains and all of that type of stuff. And then going to the corners, William Jackson, you were terrible. Kendall Fuller wasn't much better, but he was also bad. But he was better. He was not as bad as William Jackson, even though by the end of the game, William Jackson finally just discovered how to cover people, finally making good breakups without, pass interferences or holding anybody. But it's just like, bro, you're there with the receiver step for step. He never just got completely toasted, except for when he was in zone coverage. Every time he was in zone coverage, got beat by CeeDee Lamb for a good gain earlier in the game, and then later in the game, for some reason, zone coverage let him easily go inside. Cameron Curl's nowhere near the play. That's not Cameron Curl's fault. That was William Jackson's fault. Let him easily curve in for an easy wide open touchdown. William Jackson in zone coverage makes no sense. That's Jack Del Rio's fault. We got to stop doing that. We've been saying this for years since we signed him in free agency. Stop zone covering with William Jackson. If you want to zone cover with other people, you can, but at least make sure William Jackson is covering somebody man on man, no matter what everybody else is doing. Same thing with Benjamin St-Juste, technically looking like our best corner out here, and I feel like it's not even close. He needs to be on CeeDee Lamb all game. But yeah, back to William Jackson, you're step for step with guys in man coverage. So why do you feel the need to grab them when the ball is in the air? You're literally there. Just go up and attack the ball. Forget the receiver. Once the ball is at a certain point, forget the receiver, go attack it, bat it down, whatever you got to do. And even one play, he, instead of like trying to grab the ball, he just straight up punched it while holding the receiver. Of course, it was called for pass interference, but it's just like, come on, bro. You're right there. You have all of the athleticism and speed and quickness. It shouldn't be that hard. And I'm glad that by the end of the game, even though it didn't matter anymore, he finally showed us why we signed him for 10 mil, but it was only one play out of the like 12 that he was targeted. So that's just terrible. William Jackson was one of the worst players on the field today for the Washington Commanders, both offense and defense. Again, Kendall Fuller wasn't much better. He was still bad, but at least he wasn't William Jackson. And then Benjamin St-Juste, every time I saw him, he was making a play. He even made a really good play in the backfield after Cooper Rush started running with the ball. He gained like 5 yards, and without Benjamin St-Juste there to hit him, maybe he gets a first down there, but because of Benjamin St-Juste, he only gets like 5-6 yards. And then safety wise, I thought Cameron Curl was pretty good. Overall, I mean, it's kind of one of those things you got to look at the all-22 film to truly see how good Cameron Curl and all of the safeties were for real. Derek Forrest, I didn't really see his name pop. I didn't really remember him doing anything bad, but I also don't remember him doing anything well. But that's just another thing we'll have to look at in the all-22 to really judge. And then Bobby McCain, man, I mean, I don't know what he did outside of this one play, but that one play, I forgot who got beat. It may have been Kendall Fuller, somebody, but Bobby McCain was so late to the play. Like, you can see him diagnose it fairly quickly in the replay, but he's just slow. And so I can't wait for Percy Butler to finally get everything figured out mentally. And Percy Butler got hurt in that game. I don't think it's anything serious, but he did get hurt, and I don't think he returned. But like, Bobby McCain's just slow. We need Percy Butler's speed, because he saw the ball going into the air, and your one job is to not allow anything deep. So it's just like, come on now. So he saw it, and he's running to it, and he's trying to take a good angle, but he's slow. And so if that were Percy Butler, if he had the skills to recognize the play as soon as Bobby McCain was, his speed and athleticism would have allowed him to get there to break up that pass rather than it be like a 40-yard catch or whatever it was. So it's just like, man, Bobby McCain, you're straight, but you're not what we need at free safety. We need a rangier, faster guy, and Percy Butler could eventually be that guy at some point, but he's not there yet, so we're suffering. But yeah, the safeties are hard to really judge because it's just one of those things. We got to really look at the replay to see like what's going on. Look at the all 22 to see who's out of place, who's doing the right things and things like that. But I felt like whenever I noticed Cameron Curl, he was making good plays. Oh, just to go back to Benjamin St-Juste, also bad technique from him. Wasn't great overall. I mean, the interceptions we had, there were penalties called on him, even though the second one was William Jackson, but for some reason they called it on Benjamin St-Juste, even though he had nothing to deal with it. But the first one, that just really sucked. Like, that was just bad technique. And it's sad because both of the interceptions we had that were called back, first of all, one of them literally led to 7 points. So we could have been in this game. We could have won it without that penalty to happen. Would have been nice if the ref saw the Cowboys doing the same thing to us, but it is what it is. But Benjamin St-Juste, like that play, both interceptions really didn't affect the play that much. Even though the ball was going towards that receiver, Cooper Rush underthrew it so bad that technically if Benjamin St-Juste didn't hold the receiver would have been even further away from the throw. So it's just like neither of those plays. William Jackson with the hold he got on the other interception that Cameron Curl made a great play on. That was a great play to go get that interception. I think Jamin Davis had great coverage on that play as well underneath. Cameron Curl came over the top to come and snatch it from in front of the receiver. But, like, I mean, William Jackson just straight up tackling the guy, but that had absolutely nothing to do with the play. That was not the receiver that was targeted anyway, and it just really sucks that little things like that make such big differences in a game. Again, the refs were completely one-sided, but at the end of the day, those were actual penalties, and we deserve to have those penalties called. So at the end of the day, we just didn't play well enough to win this game anyway. But the refs being one-sided did literally lead to some points happening and some points not happening on our side. So it does suck. I mean, again, we didn't play well enough to win this game, but we should have been in it closer than that at the end of the day. We got to be way better, though. There's a lot of things to blame. And special teams-wise, Tress Way had a great game. He finally looked like Tress Way again. These past 2 weeks, he's looked like Tress Way again. Because the first 2 weeks, it was looking a little iffy. But these past 2 weeks, Tress Way looks good again. Joey Sly finally attempted and made his first field goal of the year. Because, again, he attempted and made one. I believe that was last game against the Eagles or the Detroit Lions. It was one of them. I think it was the Eagles last week. But it was called back due to some type of penalty. So Joey Sly technically attempted and made his first field goal this season. So that's good to know. It was only a 40-something yarder, so it wasn't something crazy impressive. But it was a good field goal that he made, so I'm happy about that. And then Dax Milne, I mean, now that he's letting the ball go over his head and calling more fair catches and things like that, letting the ball go into the end zone so we can at least start at the 25-yard line, he seemed like a better returner, but he's still not a good returner because when he does catch it and try to make something shake. Now, granted, he made a couple of guys miss today. I was proud of him. He had 2 good returns today, you could say, even though like his best return was probably like only 8 yards. And that's probably just because like special teams blocking has not been good either. So it's like a mix of both. Dax Milne is not a good returner, and our special teams blocking has been good either way. But outside of those two, whenever he did field a punt, it just wasn't good. He didn't really go anywhere. He still looked slow, but it is what it is. There's a reason we brought in 4 receivers to try out this past week. I guess none of them impressed enough for us to sign one of them to take over the punt return duties from Dax Milne, but at least we're looking, I guess. But yeah, Dax Milne just is not it punt return wise. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video and everything that went wrong, even some of the rare stuff that went right, because even when we lose and it's 25-10, some things went right, and we got to acknowledge both. But of course, we also have to call out all of the bad, and of course, there was way more bad than good when you lose 25-10. But again, the refs did play a factor in it, but at the same time, we didn't deserve this win, even if the refs were completely fair. But who knows, man, the refs did take away and add points. But man, again, let me know in the comment section how y'all felt about this game. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, shouts out to everybody that pulled up to the live stream. Shouts out to everybody that called in. Shouts out to all of y'all in the chat. I'm trying to read as much as I can and reply to as much as I can. I appreciate y'all during the live streams as well. Of course, shouts out to everybody that donated to the stream. Got a lot of donations today, so I really appreciate it. It really helps. It helps me upgrade my equipment and everything, and all of the money I'm investing right back into the brand and street scores and all of that. So I really appreciate it. And of course, shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors. Name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Be on the lookout for some film sessions about this game once I get my hands on the all 22 film. My fault. I'm tired, man. I'm not sick, but I'm definitely not 100% yet. I'm still like somewhere in the 90s, maybe the 80s. So I'm still working on it. I'm getting better. But man, I appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.